They came with clipboards, fake badges, and forged smiles, ready to carve a private road straight through my farm. I was just a stubborn landowner to them. But when they sent imposter cops and burned down my barn, they started a war they couldn't finish. I was sipping black coffee on the porch of the farmhouse my father built with his own 2 hands when I first saw the surveyors. 2 of them, maybe 3. Fluorescent vests, measuring sticks, clipboards, the whole deal. They were standing about 20 yards beyond my north fence line, squinting at tablets and staking flags into the soil like they owned it. Now, I'm not a paranoid man. I believe in minding your business and expecting the same in return. But this was no random stroll or city utility check. These guys were on my land without notice, permission, or even the decency of a neighborly knock. I walked down the gravel path, boots crunching in the dust, and called out to them. "Can I help you boys with something?" One of them looked up, startled. The other 2 kept fiddling with the gear. Just conducting a property survey for a proposed road extension. Orders from Golden River Estates HOA. I blinked. The hell's Golden River Estates got to do with my farm? The guy gave me the kind of look city folks reserve for people they assume don't own email. They filed a developmental expansion request last quarter. The plan includes a roadway connector through this area. I laughed, sharp and short. This area is my farm, and there's no goddamn road coming through it. They packed up quick after that, claimed they'd double-checked their orders, and drove off in a dusty white SUV with no official markings. I stood there for a few seconds watching the dust cloud settle, heart thudding heavier than I liked. Something wasn't right. That evening, a thick envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, just a golden stamp with the HOA's name. I opened it on the porch as the sun dipped below the hills. Inside were formal documents, an aggressive letter with legal-sounding jargon, and a map. The map showed a bright red line running straight through the western field, my pumpkin rows, marked Future Access Corridor. According to them, my land had fallen under jurisdiction via easement rights granted through HOA annexation procedures. I nearly choked on my beer. I didn't even live in their neighborhood. My property had been in our family for nearly 70 years, long before the HOA's cookie-cutter suburb even existed. I cranked up the old Ford and drove straight to the county records office the next morning. The clerk, a tired woman named Patty with more caffeine than blood in her veins, took a quick look and confirmed what I already knew. No new road permits in this district. And your parcel? Still privately owned, independently zoned agricultural. You're not under any HOA. Just to be sure, I pulled every deed, title, plat map, and zoning certificate I had on file. Every last one of them proved my land stood alone. Legally, physically, jurisdictionally. Untouchable. That same afternoon she showed up. Karen Blake, president of Golden River Estates HOA. You couldn't miss her. Power walking toward my porch in wedge heels, sunglasses big enough to cover both cheeks, and a pink blazer that screamed suburban authority complex. She didn't bother with introductions. "You've been served, Mr. Banner. Your obstruction is not appreciated." "I haven't obstructed anything except my own fence," I replied, holding the letter up between us like a bad smell. "You can't just decide to cut a damn road through someone else's land." Karen's lips curled into a tight, polished smile. "That land serves the community now. The development has needs. Connectivity, safety, growth. You'll be compensated fairly." "Compensated?" "Yes. Standard valuation plus a community improvement dividend. It's all in the documentation." I folded my arms. "Lady, I don't care if you offer me a bag of gold and a Disney World season pass. No one's tearing up my field for your golf carts and labradoodles." She glared, took a deep breath through her nose like she was trying not to throw up, and said, "You can fight this, of course, but you won't like where it leads." She turned on her heels and walked off like she'd won something. I watched her disappear down my drive, heart thumping a little faster this time, not from anger, though there was plenty of that, but from the kind of instinctual gut kick that comes when something starts to feel bigger than it should. 2 days later, the machinery showed up. I was in the barn when I heard the rumble. By the time I got to the gate, a bulldozer was already halfway across my carrot patch, a pickup idling behind it, orange vests hopping around like caffeinated ants. They weren't surveying this time. They were starting. I stormed out with my Remington slung low, not pointing, just visible. I waved them down, furious but steady. "This is private property. Turn around now." The driver cut the engine. One of the others shouted, "We have orders." "You have nothing. I'll give you 10 seconds before I call the sheriff." They didn't need 10. They scrambled back into their trucks, yelling into radios, tires spinning up gravel. I stood there, rifle in hand, heart pounding, waiting for the real cops. But instead of a cruiser, a black SUV rolled up about 20 minutes later. No sirens, no markings. A man stepped out, mid-40s, buzz-cut, mirrored sunglasses. He flashed a badge at chest level before I could read it. "Officer Doyle, County Enforcement Liaison," he said. "You are in violation of State Transportation Code section." "Hold on," I interrupted. "What department are you from?" "Special Enforcement Infrastructure Division," he replied smoothly. "Obstruction of state-mandated access routes is a prosecutable offense." I took a slow step closer. "You got paperwork?" He held up a manila envelope. I reached for it, but he pulled it back. "Not for you. Legal representative only." I narrowed my eyes. "You're not with the county. You're not even a real cop, are you?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Watch yourself, Mr. Banner. Interfering with infrastructure projects tends to end badly for stubborn folks." I stared him down, saying nothing until he turned and left. No citations, no paperwork, just a threat and a badge that looked suspiciously too shiny. By sunset, the place was quiet again. No workers, no bulldozer, no SUV, just the churned-up earth in my field and the growing realization that something rotten was creeping in. And it wasn't just asphalt. I didn't sleep much after that run-in with Officer Sticker Badge. I kept replaying the interaction, looking for anything that made sense. There was none. At sunrise, I loaded every scrap of paperwork into a binder thick enough to double as a blunt weapon and drove to the sheriff's office. The real sheriff's office. A deputy named Ramos looked through my binder carefully while sipping the world's saddest vending machine coffee. When I described Officer Doyle, Ramos frowned. "We don't have anyone by that name," he said. "Maybe he's new?" "Nope," Ramos replied. "We don't have a special infrastructure division either. And we definitely don't do enforcement for homeowners associations." He ran the badge number I'd memorized. After a few keystrokes, he leaned back. "That badge was reported stolen 2 months ago, out of a neighboring county." A cold rush slid down my spine. When I asked if they could arrest the guy, Ramos shook his head. "Badge theft doesn't prove impersonation, and impersonation doesn't prove intent. We need evidence. Video, recording, paperwork, something." Evidence. That word dug into my ribs like a splinter. When I stepped onto my porch that afternoon, a rental sedan sat in my driveway. A tall man in a crisp navy suit leaned against the hood, flipping through a leather portfolio like he was auditioning for Legal Eagles, the musical. "Mr. Banner," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Randy Miller, counsel for Golden River Estates." His handshake was too firm, like he was trying to prove bone density superiority. "You're not my counsel," I said. "Oh, of course," he chuckled, loosening his tie with a practiced gesture meant to appear personable. I represent the community's interests. We merely want to avoid unpleasantness. He opened the portfolio and pulled out a document with a flourish. This is the recorded easement agreement your late father signed, granting road access through the western section. I studied the paper. Something felt off. My father's signature was there, but it looked wrong. My dad signed everything with a sloppy left-leaning scrawl. This signature was neat, upright, like someone had practiced it in a mirror. "Where's the notary record?" I asked. "It's on file," he answered too quickly. "And where was this recorded?" "The appropriate office." "That's not an answer," I said. His smile hardened. "It's a binding, legally enforceable agreement." "What a coincidence," I replied, "that a legally enforceable agreement nobody has ever heard about just magically appeared the moment your HOA wanted a shortcut." The air shifted. He snapped the folder shut. "We're trying to be reasonable, Mr. Banner. Don't force us to escalate." And then he left, tires spitting gravel. That night it started. First, a white pickup idled outside my property line for nearly half an hour, headlights pointed at the house. When I walked toward it with a flashlight, it sped away. The next morning, a city code inspector knocked on my door. Not the county, not the state. Some random inspector claiming my barn's roof violated visual harmony standards of the surrounding community. "What community?" I asked. "My nearest neighbor is half a mile away." He gave me a pamphlet printed on cheap paper. "Acceptable aesthetic guidelines." It looked suspiciously like it had been designed in Microsoft Word by someone whose personality was HOA bylaws. The day after that, a different inspector arrived. This one claimed the stream running through my pasture posed a water contamination risk due to livestock proximity. Never mind that my cattle hadn't been in that pasture since late spring. By the end of the week, I'd collected 3 violation warnings, 2 formal concerns, and a door hanger stating that if I didn't comply, enforcement action may follow. None of them were issued by agencies I recognized. Every name and number traced back to, of course, Golden River Estates. Meanwhile, heavy machinery mysteriously reappeared at night. They didn't start digging, but they moved fencing and pushed soil into uneven piles just enough to damage crops and make it look like I was letting my land fall apart. I called the sheriff again. "Without proof," Deputy Ramos said, "it's harassment at worst. Start documenting. Cameras, dash cams, phone recordings. We need something we can take to a judge." So I drove to the hardware store and bought enough security cameras to make my place look like Fort Knox with rustic charm. I wired the barn, the fence line, the road, every blind spot I could find. If anyone breathed near my tomatoes, I'd know. On the 3rd night after installing the cameras, just past 2 in the morning, I got an alert. Motion detected near the north pasture. I opened the phone app. 3 men in reflective vests were cutting through my fence line with bolt cutters. The very same bulldozer from before idled behind them. They weren't surveying anymore. They were building. I grabbed my keys and tore down the gravel road toward them, adrenaline drowning out every rational thought. I didn't bring the gun this time. I brought a camera. I jumped out of the truck, recording the whole scene, light in their faces. "What do you think you're doing?" one of them yelled. "We have permits." "Great," I said. "Read them to the camera." They froze. The bolt cutters dropped into the dirt. They scrambled into their truck and sped off into the night, leaving my cattle scattered across the wrong side of the pasture and a section of fence lying on the ground like a snapped bone. I stood there under the stars, chest heaving, camera still recording. Now I had evidence. Real evidence. And whoever Doyle and Randy Miller were, they'd just made a damn big mistake. By the next morning, I'd watched the security footage at least 10 times. Every frame felt like vindication. They weren't just trespassing. They were executing a coordinated illegal incursion onto private land under the guise of authority. This wasn't some zoning dispute or property line argument. This was a con, and I wasn't playing defense anymore. I drove straight into town to see an attorney. Her name was Emily Harper, a sharp, no-nonsense property rights lawyer with a reputation for making county bureaucrats cry on the stand. I'd met her once at a farmer's market when she sued the city for trying to reclassify goat cheese as a processed dairy product. She won. She reviewed everything I had: the security footage, the bogus citations, the fake inspector pamphlets, the suspicious easement from the so-called lawyer Randy Miller. "This guy," she said, tapping the video of Miller's visit with her pen, "isn't even licensed in Montana, not under that name. I've checked 3 states. He doesn't exist." I blinked. So he's not just lying, he's a full-on fraud? Best case scenario, he's a con man. Worst case, he's tied to something much uglier. That was the moment the story flipped in my head. It wasn't just Karen trying to steal a shortcut through my land anymore. This was organized. Fake cops, fake lawyers, fake inspectors. I felt like I'd stumbled into a straight-to-DVD John Grisham sequel, only with more cow manure. Emily acted fast. Within 48 hours, she filed for an emergency injunction against Golden River Estates and its known agents, requesting a cease and desist on all construction or contact with my property. We included video stills of the bolt cutters and machinery, notarized affidavits, and photos of the damage. The initial hearing was set for the following Tuesday. But Karen wasn't going down quietly. On Sunday evening, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. 2 men in suits got out, slick, clean, overconfident. They claimed to be from the HOA's legal department, here to serve me a counterclaim for willful obstruction of a civic improvement initiative. I didn't even invite them inside. I stood on the porch with the camera running. "You realize this is all going to court now, right?" I asked. One of them smirked. "You're free to fight. Just know it's a losing battle. The HOA has precedent, resources, and community interest." Cool story. I have a camera, a real lawyer, and the Constitution. They left a manila envelope on my porch like a dog turd and peeled out. That envelope contained their counterclaim, all right. A 3-page hissy fit alleging everything from agricultural non-compliance to emotional harm inflicted on local board members due to obstruction-related stress. Emily read it, snorted, and said, "They've got nothing." We prepped for Tuesday. Court was held in a squat beige building that looked more like a DMV with bad lighting. Judge Hoffman presided, a wiry, gray-haired man with nicotine-stained fingers and a notorious dislike for HOA overreach. Karen showed up in a Navy power suit flanked by none other than Randy Miller. He wore the same smug grin and haircut from our last encounter. Emily leaned over and whispered, "No bar license. I'll object if he speaks." We presented our side first, the footage, the documents. Emily's calm, surgical breakdown of every lie they tried to float, the forged easement, the fake badge, the unlicensed legal rep. I watched the judge's eyebrows rise higher with each point. When it was the HOA's turn, Randy tried to argue and was immediately cut off. "Are you licensed to practice law in this state?" Hoffman asked. "Your Honor, I represent—" "Answer the question." A pause. "No, but—" "Then sit down." Karen turned red. They tried pivoting, saying the road was approved in principle under a neighborhood development plan. But when asked for actual permits, they offered a letter of intent from an HOA subcommittee and a blurry map with hand-drawn arrows. Judge Hoffman leaned back, clearly unimpressed. "This is a court of law," he said slowly, "not a PTA meeting." We didn't get a final ruling that day. It was just a preliminary hearing for the injunction. But we walked out with a temporary restraining order. No more construction, no more visits, no more fake inspectors. Violation of the order would result in criminal contempt charges. We should have had a moment to breathe. But then came the fire. That night, I don't know what time it started, maybe 2, maybe 3 a.m. I woke up to the smell before I saw the flames. The western barn was ablaze, orange light roaring into the sky like some biblical omen. I ran outside in bare feet, hose in hand, but it was too late. The fire had already gutted the place. My old tractor, stored feed, even the saddle my dad gave me at 16. All gone. The fire department arrived 20 minutes later, too late to save anything. The cause? Accelerant was found around the north entrance. Not electrical, not spontaneous. Arson. And just when I thought the week couldn't get any more cursed, the black SUV returned the next morning. Officer Doyle was back. This time he had a piece of paper in hand. "I have a warrant to search your property for evidence of community obstruction," he said calmly, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I took the paper and scanned it. It looked official, complete with a seal and a judge's signature. But the judge's name, not one I recognized. I called Emily. She checked the name. The judge had retired 6 months ago. They forged a goddamn warrant. I looked back up at Doyle. "You want to come on this land," I said. "You'd better come with real badges, real paperwork, and a real reason. Because the next time you try to pull this stunt, the only thing you'll be obstructing is a jail cell." He didn't respond. Just smiled that lifeless smile again, turned and left. I watched him go, smoke still curling in the sky behind me from the remains of my barn. They wanted a fight. Now they were going to get one. The smell of burnt hay and charred timber stuck to everything. My clothes, my hands, the damn air. The barn was still smoldering 2 days after the fire. Insurance said it would take weeks to process. The fire chief gave me a quiet, uncomfortable nod when he confirmed it was arson. Accelerants, strategically placed, professional. No lightning, no faulty wiring, no freak accident. Whoever did it wanted to destroy something and send a message. But messages go both ways. Emily wasted no time. She contacted the federal office of the State Bar Association and filed a formal complaint against Randy Miller. Or rather, Randy Miller, since the man had less legal standing than a guy selling fake Rolexes out of a van. Within 48 hours, we got confirmation. No such person ever held a license under that name in any U.S. jurisdiction. The signature on his previous legal filings matched no registered attorney. In short, we were dealing with a full-blown fraud, a con man in a suit. That was our first break. The second came from an unexpected place. One of the workers who'd driven the bulldozer into my pumpkin rows showed up at the farm gate. He looked young, early 20s maybe. Nervous. Dirt still under his fingernails. Said his name was Travis. "I didn't know it was illegal," he said. "I swear they said it was all approved." I didn't say anything, just stared at him across the gate. He looked down at his boots. They paid us in cash. No company name, no contracts, just coordinates and instructions. Emily met him the next day at her office. By that evening, we had a sworn affidavit. He gave us names, first names only, and described the black SUV, the radios, the cones. Said one of the men on site was calling himself Deputy Marshal Doyle. We finally had our second mask torn off. Emily called a contact at the local FBI office, a tired-looking agent named Hudson who'd seen enough shady land deals in his time to know when something didn't add up. He asked us to send everything: video footage, copies of the forged documents, Travis's statement, security cam stills, even the damn HOA newsletter that announced the upcoming road work. 2 days later, Agent Hudson called us back. "Well," he said flatly, "you've stumbled into a small web of insanity." Turns out, Officer Doyle was not just a fraud. He was a former private security contractor named Matthew Doyle, dishonorably discharged from a now-defunct company that used to guard mining sites in New Mexico. He had no law enforcement credentials, but he still had the old uniform, the tone, the fake badge, and apparently a very specific set of intimidation skills. As for Randy Miller, his real name was Grant Pennington. He had a history of impersonating attorneys, financial advisors, and even once claimed to be a marriage counselor, until a woman sued him for recommending couples therapy in a casino bar. Both of them had been working under private contract for a development group linked to, you guessed it, Karen Blake. Golden River Estates was planning a major expansion, and the only way to connect their new planned homes to the highway was through my land. But instead of doing things the legal way, Karen and her allies had taken a more entrepreneurial route. Fake legal filings, private goons in uniforms, doctored maps, and good old-fashioned threats. Emily immediately filed motions for both a civil fraud case and referred criminal charges to the state attorney's office. The judge granted discovery rights on HOA internal communications. And boy, did that open a floodgate. Emails, meeting minutes, financial records. They painted a clear picture. Karen had pitched the road project as a way to elevate neighborhood prestige and increase dues revenue. They'd even set aside a discretionary operations fund, cash for unlisted expenses. One email, dated 2 months earlier, stood out like a neon sign at a funeral. Don't worry, Banner will fold. He's a farmer, not a fighter. Just keep the pressure on. I've got our enforcement contacts on standby. R. That wasn't Karen. That was Richard Calder, vice president of the HOA board, a man who hadn't shown his face publicly once. Another board member, Denise Markham, resigned the day after discovery. Sent us a statement through her attorney. She'd been pressured into silence, hadn't known the full extent, was willing to testify. Karen, meanwhile, went silent. No more SUV, no more pink blazers. Rumor was she skipped town for a conference in Arizona. While subpoenas went out and the feds started circling, I kept walking the blackened husk of my barn each morning. Not because I thought I'd find something new, but because I wanted to remember what they took. I rebuilt the fence they cut down. I posted laminated copies of the restraining order every 10 feet, and I added new signs. No trespassing. Private property. Frauds and HOA executives will be composted. That last one was a joke, mostly, but just when we thought we had the upper hand, another twist landed. Emily got a call from a local journalist who'd been digging into the HOA's contractor filings. Your guy, Grant Pennington, a.k.a. Randy Miller, he's tied to 3 other shady road expansion cases, all in the same county, all involving rural landowners. 2 settled quietly. 1 disappeared. Disappeared? Emily asked. His trailer burned down, the journalist said. No suspects, no arrests, but I thought you might want to know. Emily looked at me after she hung up and said, we need to go federal with this, not just criminal, RICO. Racketeering, organized crime. This was no longer a property dispute. This was a conspiracy, and it was time we took it apart. It's funny how quiet it gets right before the storm. After the subpoenas went out and the headlines started trickling in, local HOA implicated in road fraud investigation. There was a strange silence across the valley. No more fake inspectors, no more unmarked trucks. Even the air felt still, like the whole damn county was holding its breath. Then the arrests started. It began with Grant Pennington, the artist formerly known as Randy Miller. Federal marshals picked him up at a Comfort Inn 3 towns over. He was using a fake name again, of course. This time, Graham Mendel, business consultant. They caught him with 3 burner phones, a passport in someone else's name, and a laptop full of HOA correspondence and what looked like a side hustle in fake lien claims. Matthew Doyle didn't go quietly. The feds found him squatting in an abandoned warehouse near the industrial park, dressed like a cop and packing a Glock with the serial number filed off. Apparently, he was running drills in full gear when they rolled in, like a deranged action movie extra. Both of them were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, impersonating law enforcement, falsifying legal documents, destruction of private property, and, my personal favorite, criminal trespass with intent to intimidate. Bail was denied. The prosecutor called them organized enforcers for extra-legal land grabs. The press ate it up, but the big name, the one everyone had been waiting for, came last. Karen. She'd been hiding out in a Scottsdale rental house under her sister's name, using HOA funds to pay for everything from plane tickets to spa days. The feds kicked in the door just after dawn. She was mid-facial, according to the affidavit. They perp-walked her through the airport in flip-flops and a silk robe that said Community Queen. It would have been hilarious if it hadn't been so goddamn tragic. The fallout hit fast. Golden River Estates Board of Directors held an emergency restructuring session, which is HOA code for everybody lawyering up. Richard Calder, the VP and shadow puppeteer, was subpoenaed. He tried to blame everything on Karen, claiming she acted autonomously and that the rest of the board lacked full awareness of her tactics. But the emails said otherwise, and so did Denise Markham. She took the stand in the preliminary hearing and told the court everything about how Calder personally suggested using contractors not tied to city permits, how he bragged that farmers fold fast under pressure, and how HOA dues had quietly been hiked to fund a roadway initiative no resident actually voted on. One resident, a retired firefighter, told a local reporter, "We thought the road was coming through old BLM land. Nobody said anything about cutting through someone's damn livelihood." The court issued a blanket freeze on all HOA discretionary funds. Their accounts were flagged for forensic audit. Calder tried to fight it, even requested a temporary gag order, but the judge was having none of it. "This is not an internal governance issue," she said. "This is an abuse of authority with potentially criminal implications." Meanwhile, Emily and I filed a civil suit for damages, and not just for the barn, though we included it. We went after emotional distress, crop destruction, equipment loss, the cost of refencing the entire north line, and punitive damages for attempted forced appropriation of private land. We asked for $1.2 million. Calder's face when he got served that paperwork, worth every charred pumpkin. Public opinion turned fast. HOA members started holding their own meetings, not board-sanctioned, but neighbor to neighbor. A few old-timers who'd backed Karen began to apologize in public. A couple even brought homemade pies and awkwardly worded letters. One guy, Frank from the corner lot, offered to repair part of the damaged fence with his own lumber. "My wife said if I don't help you, she'll divorce me and join your farm stand," he said. I accepted the wood, politely declined the pie. For the first time in months, I could feel the weight lifting, not off my back, but off the land itself. Like the soil was breathing again. The chickens laid more. The cattle seemed calmer. Hell, even the damn scarecrow looked smug. But there was still one battle left. The hearing to determine whether the road project itself, the entire Golden River expansion, would be allowed to proceed at all. The county planning board met in a dingy hall that smelled like moldy carpet and failed ambition. Developers sat on one side with renderings of idyllic cul-de-sacs and family-friendly playgrounds. On the other side sat a dozen farmers, 3 environmentalists, 2 angry birdwatchers, and me. I brought the fence post they cut through, plopped it on the table like a war trophy. When my turn came to speak, I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I read from a list. Number of forged documents, 7. Number of unauthorized entries onto private land, 16. Number of fake officials involved, 2. Number of barns burned, 1. Number of court orders violated, 3. Then I paused. And the number of people in this room who've had to rebuild their lives because of someone else's greed? Too damn many. Silence. The board took it under advisement. 2 weeks later, they denied the road project. Golden River Estates was officially prohibited from expanding eastward. My farm, and the forest beyond it, were declared conservation-sensitive zones. No further development permitted. When the news hit the HOA forum, it broke the website for 2 hours. I spent that night drinking whiskey on my porch, watching the wind roll over the hills. Emily called, said we had a date set for the civil trial and the state attorney's office wanted me to testify in the criminal case against Doyle, Pennington, and Karen. I said I'd be there. Then I walked out to the field, found the exact spot where they'd tried to start the road and planted a new signpost in the dirt. It didn't say no trespassing. It said, "You shall not pass." Because why the hell not? Courtrooms have a smell. Not just the stale air and industrial carpet, but something else. A mix of old paper, tension, and regret. The day of the criminal trial, that smell hit me the second I walked in. I'd been to court before, zoning boards, building permits, one time over a rooster that wouldn't shut up. But this was different. This was real justice on the line. The prosecution called it the Golden River Conspiracy. Had a ring to it, made it sound almost cinematic, like a heist movie, only instead of stealing diamonds, they were trying to steamroll private land under a veneer of suburban civility. Karen Blake sat at the defense table like a woman auditioning for sainthood. She'd traded her power blazers for a modest cardigan and glasses, like a suburban librarian on trial for overdue books instead of organized fraud. To her left sat Grant Pennington, now visibly deteriorated, hair graying at the temples, his charm finally stripped bare. Next to him, Matthew Doyle, stone-faced and silent, as if scowling hard enough might cancel out his crimes. They were all being tried together. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, locals, a few of my neighbors who probably hadn't stepped foot in a courthouse since Clinton was president. Emily sat beside me, calm as always, flipping through our notes while sipping burnt coffee. The trial lasted 6 days. The prosecution was ruthless. They laid out everything: the forged easement, the impersonation of law enforcement, the intimidation tactics, the arson, all tied together by emails, texts, bank transfers, and most damning of all, Denise Markham's testimony. She took the stand and laid bare the entire operation, from the moment Karen proposed the road project to the operational funds set aside for expedited compliance, to the decision to pressure non-cooperative landowners using outside agents. Denise wept when they showed the footage of my barn on fire. Karen's attorney tried to paint her as misled, claiming she was merely a figurehead, manipulated by her vice president and contractors. But then came the voice recordings. Emily had unearthed them late in discovery. HOA meetings Denise had secretly recorded on her phone. In one clip, Karen said, laughing, "It's just some crusty farmer. If he won't move, we'll make him. Everyone has a price or pressure points." The courtroom went still. Even her own lawyer flinched. By the time it was my turn to testify, I didn't need to say much. I told the jury what happened, how they sent fake cops, how they trespassed, how they tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one, and how, in the end, they burned down my barn like cowards. I brought in the scorched horseshoe I found in the rubble, held it up. "This," I said, "is what they left behind, not just in ash and damage, but in principle." The jury deliberated for 5 hours. They came back unanimous. Guilty, on all counts. Grant Pennington, 5 years in federal prison plus restitution for every fraudulent act. Matthew Doyle, 7 years with extra time for impersonating law enforcement and possession of an unregistered firearm. Karen Blake, 2 years of house arrest, 5 years probation, a $250,000 fine, and a lifetime ban from participating in any form of property governance. The moment the sentence was read, Karen finally broke. Her hands shook. She whispered something to her lawyer, cried. But there were no speeches, no apologies, no last-minute confessions, just quiet disgrace. Outside the courthouse, I was met with reporters. I said little, just thanked my lawyer, the jury, and the fire department. I didn't say Karen's name, didn't need to. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Emily filed the final paperwork for the civil suit. With the criminal verdict now official, the burden of proof dropped to 0. Calder, the HOA's former VP, settled almost immediately to avoid further exposure. The association's insurance firm coughed up the rest, $1.2 million. I didn't even know what to do with that kind of money at first. I started by fixing everything, rebuilt the barn, stronger this time, with a fireproof roof and a weather station on top just because I could. Replanted the fields, bought a new tractor, hired a retired Navy mechanic to live on site and keep all equipment in perfect shape. The rest? I started a legal defense fund for rural property owners. Named it the Fence Line Foundation. Emily helped set up the nonprofit. Donations rolled in faster than I expected. The HOA, meanwhile, crumbled. Residents voted to dissolve the board entirely. The Golden River Estates community hired a neutral management firm, rewrote their bylaws, and passed a strict anti-expansion clause. The HOA Forum, once a battleground of petty complaints and passive-aggressive rule enforcement, became a ghost town. Karen sold her house at a loss. Her name was scrubbed from the mailbox within a week. No farewell party, no goodbye post. Just silence. A few months later, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. The handwriting was sharp and precise. Inside was a single line. "We thought you'd be easier to roll over. You weren't. I hope the land forgives us." No signature. I burned it in the fire pit behind the barn and got back to work. The land didn't need apologies, it needed peace. And now, finally, it had it. It's funny what peace sounds like. Not silence, not exactly. It's the hum of bees moving through the sunflowers again. The creak of the barn door in the wind, now rebuilt and reinforced like a dam fortress. The distant moo of a cow too lazy to walk to the trough. It's the absence of engines rumbling where they don't belong. No more SUV tires on gravel. No more surveyor boots tromping through carrot rows. No more fake cops or real arsonists or pink-blazered tyrants pretending they run the world. Just my farm. Mine again. The payout from the civil case sat mostly untouched in the credit union. I didn't buy a sports car, didn't upgrade to a big screen TV or take a cruise. I did install solar panels, built a greenhouse, hired 2 part-time farmhands, local kids from the vocational school. Figured if they learned how to grow food instead of code TikToks, maybe the future would turn out all right. Emily kept in touch. Said the Fence Line Foundation was gaining traction. 3 other farmers in neighboring counties had already used it to block illegal land seizures and HOA overreach. One guy sent me a smoked ham as a thank you. Best I ever had. Winter came fast that year. Snow dusted the valley early and everything turned quiet and sharp. I spent most mornings walking the fence line with a thermos of coffee and my dog Gus, who had finally forgiven me for all the chaos. Every post along that border felt like a monument now, not just to property lines, but to boundaries of principle. Then came the barbecue. See, when you go to war with an HOA and you win, folks remember. And when spring rolled back around, I started getting messages from neighbors, friends, even people I didn't know. People who'd read about the case. Some sent letters, others showed up with pies or fence supplies or just a six-pack and a story of their own run-ins with HOA madness. So I threw a party, not out of ego, out of thanks. We called it the No Road Rodeo. I roasted 3 pigs, stacked hay bales into tables, hung fairy lights across the front pasture like a wedding reception for angry farmers. Folks brought lawn chairs and guitars, kids ran around playing tag between rows of onions, and someone, I swear I don't know who, brought a giant cardboard cutout of Karen Blake wearing an orange jumpsuit and a sash that read, Miss Manifest Destiny 2025. At one point, someone handed me a microphone. I hate public speaking, but I stood up anyway. Cleared my throat, looked out over the crowd. You all know what happened here, I said. They came for my land because they thought I wouldn't fight. Because they thought a signature on a fake piece of paper meant more than decades of dirt under my nails. Laughter, nods. Well, they were wrong. Cheers. But this wasn't just about me. This was about every person who's ever been told their voice doesn't matter because they don't have the right uniform or the right lawyer or the right connections. The line they tried to bulldoze through my property? That line runs through a lot of places, and we just showed them. You don't get to redraw it without a hell of a fight. Applause. And then, because I'm a simple man and not one for monologues, I handed the mic to a kid who wanted to play Take Me Home Country Roads on a busted banjo, and went to grab another beer. That night, with the fire pit glowing and the cows snoring just beyond the fence, I finally exhaled. Fully. Completely. For the first time in what felt like years. Then, just as the last folks were packing up, Frank, the guy from the corner lot who once said nothing while they tried to steamroll me, pulled me aside. You know, he said, my cousin's got a place out in Nevada. Desert acreage, real isolated. Some HOA out there has been trying to take it to build luxury glamping pods. He raised an eyebrow. Feel like taking this show on the road? I laughed. Tell your cousin to keep the pigs warm.